Welcome to the second part of this Unity 3D Steam VR tutorial series. My name is Vlad and I'm your tutor during this tutorial. As this is the second part of my tutorial series, let's look at the content. At first, we will install the fabulous VR toolkit by Systea Solutions or the Stone Fox. After that, we will add some components to our controllers. We will visit a low-poly arcade hole, which you can get from the Unity 3D asset store from Synty Labs. There, we want to play basketball on some carnival-style machines. Therefore, we will need some square dance. Square balls. To get back the balls we have thrown away, we will create a new object retractor script. Throwing balls alone ain't fun enough. We will add a fancy scoreboard. So, join me having some fun developing a VR game. In the last tutorial, we ended by having a plane to stand on and a camera rig which sets us into the scene. Now we start at the asset store. Search for the free VRTK plugin and import it. I also add the simple shopping interior asset by Synty Studios to my scene. I already created a small scene to start from for this tutorial. It will take place in some mid-80s arcade hall. So let's jump into. Here we are. We have a lot of stuff to discover, but let's add the basic component setup to our controllers. Select one controller from the camera rig, hold Command and select the other controller to have both selected. Now hit Add Component, add VRTK, use, as we want to use things. The script requires other VRTK scripts, which are added automatically. Hit the global touch highlight color and select a warm yellow and adjust the alpha channel to about half. Then hit Add Component again. Select VRTK Interact Grab script as we want to grab things too. Select an object to grab. Add a rigid body, leave mass and drag. Add a box collider and leave its properties too. At last, add a VRTK interactable object component. Here we have to change a few settings. Check highlight on touch and is grabbable. Then set precision snap grab on and the grab mechanic to child of controller. Double check if your item is marked as non-static. Rigid bodies get affected by gravity, so our box would fall through. Select the desk and add a box collider to it. Select the second desk too and add another collider. I also chose the floor, added a collider and applied it to the prefab. So every floor has now a collider. Let's check the correct setup again. Both controllers have the following components: VRTK controller events, controller actions, interact touch, interact use, interact grab. The object has a rigid body, a box collider, VRTK interactable object set to is grabbable, precision snap, grab mechanic, child of controller. Time to test our scene. I can grab the object by holding the side buttons of the Vive controller. I can drop it by releasing it. And grab it again. I can already have some fun, but objects without a collider get ignored. But that's okay so far. Let's move the camera rig to the other side of the room. Let's select the basketball machine. Unfortunately, the machine is one single mesh. The basketball and the machine cannot be used separately. Let's change this. Import the mesh in Blender. It's too small. Focus it by holding the numpad period key and scale it by pressing S and 10. Focus again by period. Get into edit mode by pressing tab key. Hit A to select all and hit A again to select nothing. Select one vertex of the basketball, hold Ctrl and press numpad plus a couple of times, then the whole basketball is selected. Hit G to test your selection and hit escape to exit the move mode. Press P to separate the basketball from machine. Select the vertex of the other balls and Ctrl numpad plus again. This time erase them with X. Do the same with the third basketball. Hit Tab to exit edit mode and select the ball in the outline. Double click it to rename the ball and drag and drop it inside the machine to set its parent. Save and return to Unity. Inside Unity, delete the old prefab from the scene. Drag and drop your new model to the place of the original one. That's the correct scale. In my case, 0.6. Rotate it correctly and that's the correct material. Simple shop interior for the machine and the ball, as well as the provided new material to the machine net. Our next step is to create a canvas for the scoreboard and set it up. Add a canvas via Context Menu UI canvas to the machine itself. Set the render mode of the canvas to world space. Set position to 0, 2.93 and minus 2.447. Set width to 400 and height to 200. Change scale to 0.004. Change rotation to 180. Right-click on the canvas and add a text to it. Change the text of the text to time. Center it horizontal and vertically. Add an outline component to the text and change its outline color to white. Change the name to display name. Add a panel via UI panel. Change color to black and alpha to maximum. Change the size of the panel and position it below the text. Add a text inside the panel. Change the text to 100. Change alignment to vertical and horizontal centered. Change the font size. Change the anchor to centered. Duplicate the display time 2 times. Change name to display score and display high score. Rename the inner text component to text time, text score and txt high score. Modify the anchoring of the elements to upper left. Change the text to high score Select display time, change its anchoring to upper top and center. And select display score, change its text to score and move it to the top right corner. Adjust the panels to have a perfect size. To get the right look, I downloaded a font from 1001fonts.com. It's called Crashed Scoreboard. I changed the font on the text to this font and changed the color to a dark red. Here we have our basketball machines ready for some action. But one thing is missing. Let's add a start button to our machine. Mark the machine, hit Game Object menu, 3D Object and Cube. Scale it and move it to be somewhere on the right side of the machine. Also change the name to Start Button. Move it to the right place so we can grab it with our VR controllers. Create a new folder, Materials. Add a new material, call it Red. Change the albedo of the material to a reddish color. Now our machine is ready for some scripts. Let's have a quick overview of the scripts we want to create. We will add a scoreboard script to handle the logic, a ball retractor, a basketball itself, a scoreboard trigger, and some generic VRTK button event script. Create a new script inside your scripts folder. Call it Scoreboard. At this time, let us also rename the canvas to Scoreboard Canvas. Drag and drop the scoreboard script to the scoreboard canvas. Open it in MonoDevelop. Let's remove the start and update functions. We will add them later again. Let's look at the functionality of the scoreboard. It will handle playing state, handle if we scored something, handle a start of a game, handle the end of the game, and load and save the high score. Let's add some variables to our inspector. We need a public info or playtime. This is how long a game is gonna be. Next, we want to add a bool to check if a game is running. Next, we need some integer variables for our current high score, for a current score, and a float variable for our current time. Then we want to add our first function to handle a start of a game. Therefore, we have to check if a game is already running. We want to set our variables to their default values, set isGameRunning to true, and start some music while running the game. To start music, we want to create a separate function for the checks and stopping music which is playing before. To start playing music, we need an audio source and a clip to play. As we want to play a clip during the idle time too, we add a clip therefore as well. Let's create the start music method. It takes an audio source and a clip to play. In the function, we want to check if there's already a clip playing on the audio source. If so, stop that clip. Our given clip should be not null. If so, set the audio source clip to the clip and start playing the clip on the audio source. Let's create a function to play sound effects, but this time not stop the current running clip, just play another clip on the scene. Let us now create a function to quit an already playing game. Therefore, we have to set our isGameRunning variable to false, check if the current score is higher than the last high score, handle the new high score in a separate function. Then we reset the current score and current time to its default values, play some stop game sound and play the idle music. Therefore, we need to add a stop game sound. Let's now add the various high score related functions, which are load a high score, save a high score, and handle a new high score. The high score is saved and loaded from the player preferences. Therefore, it's good behavior to have a constant text to refer to by loading and saving. To handle a new high score, we want to save the high score to the player preferences. After that, we want to update the visible high score to the new high score. Then we want to congratulate the player for his achievement by playing a nice sound. Therefore, we need another sound clip variable. While playing the sound, we want to do some nice display transition. But let's implement this function later. Let's add the start function of mono behavior back again. This function is called when a game object is loaded the first time in a scene. Here we want to save the reference to an audio source component. We also want to load the current high score from the player prefs. After that, we want to call the handleGameEnd function to set everything up. As we keep a reference to the audio source, we have to add this component to our scoreboard canvas. Set it to not play on awake, to loop, to have a 3D sound and its volume to about 1/3. Unity tells us we have a problem in our code. Let's fix this by adding the current score to the save high score function. Now we add the public function, which is called each time we have scored with a ball. We have to make sure that the game is running before scoring. Then we increase the current score and play some sound. Add a sound clip again. We add back again the mono behavior update, which is called each frame. We check if a game is running and call the handle gameplay function. In handle gameplay, we update the current time. Then we check if the current time is larger than the play time. Then we have to end the game. Now we want to update the text in the canvas each frame. We check if we are currently in the fancy display transition. If not, we create the display time countdown. This should be more dramatic if there are less than 5 seconds in the game. For this effect, we add fast-running decimal numbers. We want to create a showText function which updates the real text components on the canvas. This is useful as we are going to use it later on the fancy display transition. But before we can update the text components on the canvas, we have to first make them available in the inspector. Using the showText method, we want to create our display transition for a new high score. As this will run asynchronous, we will need to declare it as enumerator. We set our display transition boolean to true to prevent the update function from updating the text. We update the text to display some stars. Then we wait for 1 second, update the text to new high score, and wait a second again before updating to stars again. Then we wait a second and revert to the original numbers. The last method we want to add to the scoreboard is the possibility to reset a ball if it's lost. Herefore, we need a position where to reset the ball. We need to pass the lost basketball to the function. But therefore, we need to add a basketball script. We need to reset the rigid body of the ball to reset its physics engine related properties. We also need to reset its position and rotation. Then we need to tell the ball that it's entered the playfield again. Now we add some functionality to the basketball. We need a variable to store the time when the basketball left the playfield. We also need a timer when to reset the ball. To call the reset function, we need a reference to the scoreboard. In the update function, we check if the timer ran out and then call the reset ball method on the scoreboard. We now create a public function to tell the ball it has left or entered the playfield. It's now time to fill out the public inspectable variables on our scoreboard canvas. Drag and drop the text components to their corresponding properties in the inspector. Create an empty game object, call it reset position, and drag and drop it to the inspector. For the audio clips, I imported some free audio clips from freesound.org. Drag and drop your audio clips from the project outline into the inspector. Next thing to do is add a score trigger to our basket. Create a new cube in your machine, scale it and move it towards the basket. If it's in position, remove the mesh filter and the mesh renderer. Create a new C# script, call it score trigger and add it to the score trigger. Add a public reference to the scoreboard, remove the start and update function, and add the mono behavior function on trigger entered. Check if the collider which entered the trigger is a basketball, and if so, call the scored function from the scoreboard. At last, drag and drop the scoreboard to the scored trigger public variable in the inspector. Now it's time to take care of the basketball. Add a sphere collider, because a box collider would not move as we want to. As the pivot of the basketball is not set up correctly, we have to fix this. Open your model again in Blender. Select the basketball and in object mode hit space and set origin. Set origin to center of mass. Save again and now it's set up correctly. We now have to add a rigid body component to our basketball. Then we add the VRTK interactable object. We set precision snap and grab attach mechanic to child of controller. To create a bouncing basketball, we have to add a physics material. Create a new folder physics materials and create a new physics material. Set dynamic friction to 0.4, static friction to 0.4, bounciness to 0.8 and bounce combined to maximum. Drag and drop the created ball material to the sphere collider of the basketball. Create a prefab from the basketball by dragging it from the scene into the project outline. Duplicate the basketball in the scene by hitting Ctrl and D. Let there be 3 basketballs. After resetting the pivot point, the sphere collider needs to be resetted. Add a mesh collider to the machine itself and to the net. Change the radius of the sphere collider to 0.2 and apply its settings to the prefab. Let's test the basketballs. They're all holding in place. We can grab the basketballs using the controller and even throw them on the playfield. But they don't roll back. At first, add a mesh collider to the net. Before we continue, we want to add the start functionality to the start button. Create a new script, VRTK generic use event. Drag and drop it onto the game object of the button. Insert using Unity engine.events. Create a variable for a Unity event. Let our script inherit from VRTK interactable object, but before we have to import it by using VRTK. Override the onInteractableObjectUsed method and invoke a Unity event. Now we have to add a new event in our script. Drag and drop the scoreboard onto it and set the used method to start game. We also have to set our isUsable flag to true. Now we want to retract lost basketballs into our machine. Therefore, we add another cube to our machine and scale it so our machine is completely included in the trigger. Then remove the mesh filter and mesh renderer again. Also don't forget to set the is trigger flag to true. Now create the last C# script, the basketball retractor. Add it to the basketball retractor game object and start editing it. In this C# script we need to add 2 functions. One if the trigger is entered and the other one if the trigger is exited. We check if the colliding object is a ball, and if so, call the method on the ball. The balls are not rolling back again inside the machine, so let's fix this by editing the mesh in Blender. We have to resize the ball opening a little bit and add some corners inside so the balls can roll back again properly. The last thing we forgot is to add the basketball script to our basketballs. Let's change this. At this point we check our scene by entering the VR. Watch me throwing some balls. And recognized we're missing our fancy transition. So let's call it from our script. Let's now try to beat my own high score by entering virtual reality again. Thank you for watching my tutorial and see you on my next tutorial.